Reverse by Black K. Cat. Chapter 63. Foment. When Kurama wanders into the kitchen early in the morning, it's to find all of the kids already present and Kushina in the center of the huddle. There are pots of water boiling on the stove, and Fu and Karin are carefully dropping balls of dough into them, while Gaara and Naruto roll more, and Yugito meticulously threads cooked ones on the skewers.
Isn't it easier just to badango?
Kurama asks, eyeing the mess a little wearily. But this is more fun! Kushina protests, waving a spoon covered in sweet soy sauce at him. Don't be sticking them down, Tata!
Whatever, tomato.
Kurama rolls his eyes even as he drops into one of the chairs at the kitchen table. For a second, he thinks about commenting on the fact that they're going to be eating dango for breakfast, but decides the pouts Fu and Naruto will give aren't worth it. Instead, he leans back in his chair, watching Fu giggle with Karin, Naruto proudly showing off a misshapen cube, Gaara with his tongue poking out from between his teeth in concentration. Kushina has turned her focus to Yugito, who's smiling shyly up at her, and is pretty good. I'm going to be with Sarutobi-sama all day, Kushina tells him without looking up from laying out a bowl of the mitarashi sauce.
Does that mean we get Kurama to ourselves all day?
Naruto asks enthusiastically, craning around to beam at Kurama. That's so cool! Kurama snorts, trying to shove down the bright flicker of warmth that rises in response.
Yeah, kid, you can stay with me.
And that's actually perfect for what he needs. Absolutely perfect, with the added advantage of fulfilling at least 3 different goals at the same time. Kurama's a fox, and that's his favorite kind of plan.
If you're up to it,
he says, perfectly casual as he inspects his claws for nicks.
We can always play tag.
There's instant silence as 5 pairs of eyes
Snap up to look at him.
Tag? Yugito asks, very interested. The 6 of us? Kushina laughs, dumping the empty pot in the sink. That sounds like even more fun than Dango. Playing on teams might be cool, you know? Every Jinchuriki for themselves, is Fu's protest, and she grins at Karin, who's just opening her mouth with an offended expression, and adds, You can't, Karin-chan. You're an honorary Jinchuriki just like Kushina-ni. Mollified, Karin nods once. I like tag, she decrees, and I don't need a team to win. I want to be on Kurama-ni's team, Gaara says, quiet but firm.
Me too!
Naruto agrees immediately.
Or Kurama-ni can be it, and you can be on my team, Gaara! It's the most awesome team ever, especially if you're there too!
Gaara flushes and ducks his head, and Kurama snorts, amused.
Temporary alliances only, he proposes, and other than that, it's a free-for-all.
He has a flash of Isan glaring at him, staring narrowly at Yugito, and doesn't bother to swallow a malicious grin.
Points for collateral damage while we're playing. The higher ranking the shinobi you prank or catch, the more points you get.
Fu beams like this is the greatest thing she's ever heard.
We can take out other people while we're running? That's so cool.
It is.
Yugito agrees, and she's wearing the expression of a cat planning its way out of trouble.
Kurama-ni, can we use a whole village?
Of course.
Kurama assesses, but it will be easy enough to steer the game if he has to, and more suspicious if they're actively avoiding an area.
Maybe not actually inside the administration building, but anywhere else you can get to inside the walls is fine.
Let's go!
Naruto insists, already sliding down from his stool. Oh no! Kushina catches him by the collar of his shirt and pulls him back up. We've got to finish up here first, Naruto. I can't teach you sailing if you can't finish what you start, you know?
Naruto looks appropriately horrified by this threat and hurriedly gathers up dough for another ball.
I can finish stuff!
He protests.
I'm good at finishing!
I'm sure you are.
Kushina loops an arm around him in a tight half hug, then let's go.
Is that second pot boiling yet, Karin-chan?
It is,
Karin tells her, and these ones are starting to float. Count to 60 and then fish them out, Kushina says cheerfully, turning back to the 2 girls. One more batch and we'll be done. Kurama, you could make yourself useful and start washing up, you know?
Kurama scoffs. I did the dinner dishes last night by myself because someone was too busy bouncing around the house like a deranged monkey.
I'm going to be Hokage! Kushina glares at him. I get to be excited about that!
Yeah. Kurama waves a hand, brushing her off, but it's hard. He spent a good 20 years listening to his Naruto make that same declaration, and it's difficult now to hear it from anyone else. He's glad it's Kushina getting the hat. Among other reasons, he was absolutely certain Tsunade would have followed through with her personal gopher Jonin threat. But some things it takes time to let go of. Naruto drops the last of the dough on the waiting plate and wiggles down from his seat, then immediately throws himself headlong at Kurama. Kuramani! With a theatrical grunt, Kurama pries the boy off his leg and hoists him up into his lap. What kit? He asks. Beaming, Naruto throws his arms around Kurama's neck, hugging him tightly.
I just wanted to say good morning. Good morning, Kuramani.
Kurama's breath hitches a little in his throat, but he covers it, shoving down the flicker of warmth that rises. Morning, Naruto. He returns, and no force on earth could stop him from burying his nose in blonde hair and hugging him close. There's a tug at his pant leg, and without having to look, Kurama reaches down and pulls Gaara up to join them, looping his free arm around the redhead. Good morning to you too, Gaara, he says, amused. You're going to be okay playing tag, Squirt. Mutely, Gaara nods, face tucked into Kurama's shirt. There's a pause before he glances up, and then he says carefully, I can be on a team with anyone. Well, that's definitely progress. Kurama gives him a smile, ruffling his hair lately, and offers, I know you can, Gaara. We can be on a team, Karine says, even as Fu helps her down from her perch. We'd be the best team, and your chakra is nice too. It's really big and warm. Instead of hiding his face again, Gaara gives her a small but happy smile. Okay, he agrees. I want to be it. Fu bounces over to throw herself at Kurama, half sprawling over his knees. Kuramani, can I be it? Yugito makes a noise of protest, abandoning her brush to join the press by grabbing Kurama's sleeve. I won't be it first. The two girls eye each other for a moment before Fu turns wide, pleading eyes on Kurama. Kuramani, pick. Yes, Yugito agrees, tugging lightly on his arm. Kuramani, which one, please? Sage, Kurama thinks, glancing between two pairs of retreating eyes. He's not getting paid anywhere near enough for decisions like these. Rock, paper, scissors. He suggests a little desperately and shoots a snickering Kushina his best surreptitious glare. All right, Yugito agrees instantly, turning to Fu, who sticks her fist out agreeably. Kurama can practically see him at the top of Ichome tensing in competition under their skin. The Nibi and the Nabi have always been friendly for the most part, but Kurama remembers more than a few knockdown fights between them. Why don't we get the others first? He proposes, gently shaking Fu off so he can stand. Yugito, can you grab Utakata? Interest kindles in Yugito's eyes, making her look like a cat dropped into the middle of an aviary. I think he was out by the well, she says and darts away. Kurama hears the back door slam carelessly and has to shake his head in amusement. The Yugito we first met would never have been childish enough to do that, and it's a good sign that she can be now. There's been lots of changing going on, and not just in the timeline. Kurama can't help but think that his Naruto would approve. And I'll wake up Roshi and Han. Fu volunteers, cheerfully bouncing on her toes. With a huff, Kurama ruffles her hair, then warns, dodge carefully. Fu's grin brims with cheery mischief as she salutes, then bolts in the direction of the bedrooms Han and Roshi claimed. Karin takes Yugito's spot at Kurama's elbow, one hand fisted in his sleeve, and asks, do we get a prize for winning? Kushina laughs, dumping a load of dishes in the sink, and proposes, how about the winner gets to pick what takeout we get tonight? Ramen! Naruto says immediately, I'm gonna win and pick ramen! Barbecue. Gaara counters and ducks his head a little at Naruto's betrayed expression. He's smiling though, so Kurama doesn't worry. And you're going to pick okonomiyaki, right? Kurama asks Karin, amused. Karin flashes him a startled look as if she hadn't expected him to remember even when she said it so clearly, and then nods, a flush rising in her cheeks. Yeah, she says determinedly. It's the best food, so of course I will. Naruto flails and nearly falls off Kurama's lap, only saved by Kurama snatching the back of his shirt just in time. But ramen! He squawks. Then you'd better win, right, kid? Kurama tugs him back to a slightly safer position. I'm definitely Naruto insists, still looking horrified.
Then we can have ramen and I'll prove it's the best!
Sushi is better. Yugito puts in as she re-enters the kitchen, Utakata just behind her. She glances up at Kurama and asks, "We get to pick if we win?" "I like that idea." Fu agrees, and Utakata yelps as she flings herself up onto his back, making him stagger a step forward. From the hallway, there's a very loud thud, a groan, and a crash like a bookshelf falling over. Someone yelps, and Roshi's muffled snarl of, "Dame Kurama, control your spawn!" makes Fu giggle happily. A moment later, Han emerges, dressed but looking slightly bleary-eyed, with Roshi a step behind him. The shorter man is covered in dust and glitter in equal measure, and he narrows his eyes at Fu pointedly. Fu, of course, just beams innocently. "We're going to play tag in the village, and we get to take out Shinobi for points," she says excitedly. Roshi gives up on his glaring, instead casting a speculative look at Kurama. "In the village," he grunts, and there's something like a smirk trying to hide under his beard. "I can't imagine that will make the Kage happy." "It's just a game," Kurama drawls, and he doesn't try to hide his grin even though it's all teeth. Han makes a quiet sound of amusement, reaching out to pluck Fu off of Utakata and set her on his own shoulder.
"I take it we're invited to join in."
When Kurama nods, he chuckles.
"I can think of far worse ways to spend the morning."
Kushina laughs. "I'll keep the Hokage occupied," she volunteers, filling the sink with soapy water and rolling up her sleeves. "Give me 20 minutes to finish up here, and then you're good." Suspicion makes Kurama study her closely for a moment, but her smile is completely innocent in a way that Kurama can't peg as either bullcrap or sincere. Deciding that it won't matter either way in the long run, he nods and says, "Kitten, sweetheart, why don't you pick who's it and then give the rest of us half an hour to scatter?" "All right." Fu leaps lightly down from Han's shoulder and whirls with a flourish to present her fist to Yugito. "Kurama-ni, you're the referee, okay?"
"On the count of 3.
Kurama says, bemused and entirely reminded of how competitive Sasuke and Naruto used to get as Yugito copies Fu's pose.
1, 2, 3.
Yugito makes a sound of victory, allowing herself a single goddamn bounce and a bright smile as she steps back. "I help with the dishes until you're ready, Kushina-ni," she says, glancing at the clock. "The person who's been caught the least with the highest points is the winner."
"That works."
Kurama agrees, rising to his feet and hauling Naruto and Gaara with him. "Good luck." As far as distractions go, Kurama honestly can't imagine finer. And if the kids get a fun morning out of it, all the better. Naruto whoops and wiggles in his grasp. "Tag is the best!" he crows. "This morning is the worst," Iruka thinks, tripping over a stone in the path and only just managing not to drop the sack of graded tests in his arms. He's 15 minutes late to the early morning staff meeting, only halfway through grading yesterday's homework, without any lunch for later because he forgot his bento in the fridge, and without breakfast because he fell asleep on the couch last night and entirely missed hearing the alarm in his bedroom go off. There wasn't a chance to shower either, and the only hair tie he could find was completely stretched out and practically worthless. He hasn't even had his coffee yet. Iruka takes a corner too fast, still struggling to get a more secure grip on his papers, and feels with a flash of horror the exact moment his sandal slips. There's a moment where he tries to decide whether to drop the tests and save himself or hang on and hit the ground hard, and deft hands catch him and pull him back upright even as they tug him around, spending momentum. Iruka staggers a step, then catches his balance and is almost tempted to cry in sheer relief. "Thank you," he says sincerely, turning to face his savior, and almost swallows his tongue when Utakata smiles back at him, warm and calm. "It was no problem," the Jinchuriki assures him easily, folding his hands in his wide sleeves. "Are you alright? You look a little—" Amber eyes go wide, and Utakata leaps back in a blur. One of the younger Jinchuriki, the girl from Kumo, Iruka thinks, even as he yelps and stumbles back. Yugito, that's her name, hits the street where he was a fraction of a second ago, making a sound like a discontented cat, and lunges faster than Iruka's eyes can quite follow. Iruka slips past her reaching fingers, ducks when he flips to kick at his head, and pulls a pipe out of his sleeve.
One breath from it, and iridescent bubbles fill the street in a whirling rush, forcing the girl back. Yugito twists, lunging left, but in that moment, Iruka can already feel an arm close around his waist. There's a lurching rush of speed that he recognizes as a shunshin cloaked in another burst of bubbles, and then the world refocuses. They were a good distance from where they were, close to the academy, and Utakata lands lightly on the grass with a relieved breath. I always forgot how fast she is, he says, almost a complaint, and Iruka realizes all over again that Utakata, for all his poise, is a year younger than even Iruka. He might be a jonin and a human container, but he's still 15. Are you training? He ventures a little cautiously because just about the last thing he wants to do is show any weariness of the Jinchuriki again after the time he spent with them yesterday. But if two of them are fighting in the streets, it's probably a good thing to know. Utakata makes a noise of amusement as he untangles himself from Iruka. It's just tag, but Yukito is ruthless when she wants something, and Kurama promised her sushi if she won. Iruka laughs before he can help himself because the girl's expression was one he'd more readily expect on a jonin in the midst of an A-rank mission. A handy reminder that for all the big humans out of her, Yukito was a child too. Thankfully, Utakata chuckles as well, scanning the streets around them before he tucks his pipe away again. I don't mean to hold you up, he says apologetically. The staff meeting. Iruka groans, gathering his papers against his chest. At least he's a good 6 blocks closer now. He's terrible at the shunshin on his own and hadn't wanted to risk having one go haywire if he used it. You saved me at least 10 minutes, he says, waving off the apology. I appreciate it. With a smile, Utakata inclines his head, then steps back. Have a good day, he offers. I hope the others and I don't disturb your class. They disturbed themselves plenty, so don't worry about it. Iruka assures him and watches the Kirinin take 3 steps and leap into the trees, vanishing from sight almost immediately. His hair tie takes that moment to snap with a quiet pop, sending strands of barely brushed dark hair cascading into his eyes, and Iruka groans. Utakata's appearance might be a bright spot, but this morning is still awful. Shisui's first hint that something terrifying is happening is the glitter bomb that smashes into his face the moment he steps out of the military police building. With a loud shriek, he ducks away from what his ears tell him is a second projectile, even as he claws at the powder already in his eyes. There's a thud of feet in the dirt, a war cry, and a loud ha from somewhere close by, and then hands grab his shoulders to use him as a springboard. Small hands. That's probably the only thing that keeps Shisui from lunging for a kunai, which is fortunate because if he accidentally stabbed one of the Jinchuriki kids, he's pretty sure Kurama really would eat him. Probably alive. And definitely not in the fun way. Not that Shisui wants him to, per se, but Shisui is also 15, and Kurama's kind of pretty even when he's ripping people up with his claws. He can't be blamed for his hormones getting terror and attraction mixed up. He feels the same way about Ago most of the time. Ugh, you little brats! He says, ducking back towards the cover of the buildings as he scrubs at his eyes. Getting Fu's scale powder off probably won't change the fact that he's been blinded by the flash of it, but he has to make some attempt. There's a faint noise of a scuffle from the street, and Shisui really freaking does not want to be trapped anywhere near a Jinchuriki fight. Sorry, Fu calls, failing to sound sorry at all. I wasn't aiming for you, I promise. Tell that to my eyes! Shisui complains and tentatively blinks them open. His vision is mostly spots at the moment, and this is probably a really bad time to think just how devastating Fu would be against a squad of dojutsu users. He knows she helped against pain in the canyon, but that's something entirely different from the way his brain is now labeling the image of a cheerful, bubbly 10-year-old as upward, do not fight! And that's not even her using more than the most basic of her Jinchuriki abilities. Squinting through the spots, Shisui narrows his eyes and focuses just in time to see Yukito snatch Fu out of the air like a cat catching a bird, a loud sound of victory escaping her. Immediately, she adds, "Tag, you're it!" and then leaps for the nearest building, scrambling straight up the wall and over the roof. Oh, drat! Fu huffs, picking herself up out of the dirt and brushing off her skirt. She gives the spot where Yukito disappeared a dark look, then shakes it off and turns to Shisui with a bright smile. Sorry again.
she says, though she doesn't sound any more sympathetic this time either.
But you were worth way too many points to pass up an opportunity like that.
Points? She splutters. You... What? Food beams!
You're a jounin, she says cheerfully. Jounin are like 10 points if we catch them in the crossfire. Chunin are 5, Genin are 2, and civilians are 1. Oh, and Kage or village heads are 20.
I hate you! She groans. This was Kurama's idea, wasn't it? That gets him a laugh, and Fu leaps off, chakra blooming around her like a flower. It settles and condenses, and just as she reaches the height of her leap, it flips over iridescent wings, shimmer into existence, immediately shifting into a blur as they start beating.
I'll never tell,
Fu declares, but she grins at Shisui in a way that says it was absolutely Kurama's idea. I'm going to go home and hide under my bed, Shisui decides. That sounds like the safest option here.
Fu giggles like he just complimented her.
I don't mind. That means no one else gets to use you for points.
With a cheerful salute, she soars up, heading for the market district. Hiding, Shisui thinks as he casts a weary glance around himself and then makes tracks for the Uchiha compound. Definitely sounds like the best idea ever! Mei is faintly bored, a little annoyed, and largely out of sorts. Yagura is cooped up with the rest of the Kage and made it very clear that he didn't need either her or Zabuza hovering, and Zabuza is having fun pitting himself against that sickly-looking Kana'a swordsman he probably scraped up from under a rock. She'd contemplated trying to go around with Zabuza's apprentice, but her lava and Haku's ice probably wouldn't mix well, and she'd rather stab herself in the eye than have to listen to Zabuza bitch about her hurting his student. Not that she wants to hurt Haku at all, but the guilt of doing so would very quickly be outweighed by the annoyance. So instead, Mei is calling this a morning off. Kanaha is pretty enough to be a distraction, even though the lack of thick, ever-present mist and the resulting excessive visibility is a little bewildering. Fire Country is a lot larger than Water Country, and the market makes the difference obvious. There are a lot more goods and merchants than she's used to, and the array of colors is almost dizzying. A display of silks catches her eye, and Mei stops in front of the stand, eyeing the draping fabric a little wistfully. The white would be perfect for a wedding dress, she thinks, running a light finger over it. Though the blue is pretty as well, and the embroidery on the red is lovely. There's a very talented seamstress a few blocks over, a woman says from behind her, and Mei turns in surprise. The dark-haired woman who burst into the Hokage's office the other day smiles at her, then nods a polite hello to the cloth merchant. Her rates are very good, and she specializes in shinobi clothing. In case you were interested.
Thank you,
Mei returns, casting another glance at the blue silk.
I don't know how long we're going to be here, though.
The woman nods in understanding.
Uchiha Makoto?
She offers.
Terumi Mei.
Mei smiles back, taking a step away from the stall, and Makoto falls into step next to her.
You're a friend of Uzumaki, then?
Yes. The expression that flickers over Makoto's face is one of fierce joy, all tangled up with relief and old grief, and her fingers tighten on the basket full of vegetables she's carrying. Kushina, at least? I'm afraid I've never met the other one. Mei snorts.
He's a spitfire,
she says, amused,
with a terrible taste in men.
Makoto looks startled for a moment before she laughs, raising a hand to hide it.
Just like Kushina, then.
She agrees, dark eyes dancing.
You're acquainted with him, I take it?
We tried to overthrow the Mizukage together,
Mei says brizzily, waving a hand as if it's of no account. When Makoto's expression shades towards shock, Mei laughs.
The shrimp deserved it, don't worry. And it got him back to normal, so everything ended well.
The Uchiha doesn't look like she quite knows what to do with that, but before she can decide on a reaction, there's a flurry of screams from somewhere behind them. Both Mei and Makoto jerk around looking for the source, and whoa! Roshi almost lands on them, springs aside, and flips out of the way of Utakata's lunge! A blurring, quick hand seal and a spur of rock slams up out of the ground, catching the teenager in the gut to hurl him back. From above, a shape with blurring wings drops, and Mei's had enough experience watching Fu fight that she jerks away, pulling Makoto with her just as an explosion of light blinds everyone still facing that direction. Roshi laughs more carefree than Mei's ever heard him before, and sweeps a showy bow for the two of them.
Allow me to wish a spectacular morning to a pair of particularly lovely ladies, he said grandly. As he straightens, he tosses May a wink and a smile that makes her breath catch, then turns to high-five Fu. They take off running together, and a moment later Utakata follows at a sprint, shedding glittery scale powder, rock dust, and bubbles in equal measure. There's a long moment of silence as the screams die down. Yours? Makoto asks finally, casting an amused glance at May and then back over the market. May looks too, and it's certainly more chaotic than it was 5 minutes ago. Several people are stomping out small flames, at least one is struggling upright out of a pile of goo, and more than a few are trying to shake glitter off their clothes. May smiles helplessly, pressing her hands to cheeks that are surprisingly flushed, and laughs. Maybe, she says, and it's like a spark of hope inside of her. I think, maybe. Hokage-sama! Hyuga Hoheto cries, bursting into the office with a frantic expression, the rest of his patrol behind him. In the market, there's... He cuts up abruptly, blinking at the several other patrol leaders in various levels of panic, all assembled in front of the Hokage's desk. Sarutobi sighs, kneading at one temple, and reaches for his pipe. The market this time? He asks wearily, shooting Kushina a glare as she hangs onto the back of a chair and wheezes for breath. Yes, sir? Oheto glances at his fellow squad captains, some of whom look rather worse for wear. Glitter seems to be a common theme, but one woman looks like a cat used her for a scotchy post, while a man drips water all over the floor and another kunoichi's uniform is faintly singed. One of his fellow clansmen is trying surreptitiously to empty his pockets of sand and amassing a rather impressive pile around his feet in the process. You'd better hope, the Sandama informs Kushina testily, that there's a village left for you to inherit at the end of this. Kushina gets her giggles under control and straightens up, grinning at her leader. It's just slightly possible that there's a malicious undertone to it. This is a lot more satisfying than punching someone, you know? She asks both cheerfully and pointedly. Sarutobi's face does something complicated, and then he sighs in clear resignation. The office door slams open, and an Inuzuka staggers in, looking like she got dragged backward through a hedge with 3 other kunoichi behind her. Hokage-sama, the Jinchuriki are fighting in the... Sarutobi leans forward to rest his face in his hands, muttering something that Hoheto is fairly certain he doesn't want a translation to. The other Kage, he notices, all look like they're just realizing how big of a Fuma shuriken they managed to dodge and can't be anything but grateful for it. Itachi is in the village, but he still isn't around, Sasuke thinks morosely, judging the distance between himself and the target and then tossing his kunai half-heartedly. The academy's training ground is empty since all the other students are eating lunch, but it's not helping Sasuke's concentration. Itachi was supposed to help him with his contest this morning, but he never showed up. It doesn't help that their mother was more cheerful than Sasuke had ever seen her before as she packed up his bendo, practically dancing in the kitchen as she worked. Their father had left just as Sasuke was getting up, the way he's been doing so frequently lately, with a distracted murmur about meeting some of the other clan heads. It's nice not to have him asking questions about Sasuke's training and comparing him to Itachi, but it's been a while since they all sat down together like a family, and Sasuke misses it more than he had thought he would. From somewhere close by, there's a giggle. Sasuke blinks, trying to look around himself. Iruka-sensei is strict about not throwing kunai where other students might wander into the path of them, and Sasuke feels a flicker of annoyance that someone might be interrupting him. Slightly unfair, maybe, given that he's not really doing anything at the moment, but it's like feeling upset that Itachi has to leave, even when Sasuke knows he has duties as a high-ranking shinobi. He opens his mouth to call out, and shh! Someone hisses loudly, and the bushes rustle. In a rush, a small figure darts out, grabs him, and hauls him back towards their hiding spot. Sasuke gets smacked in the face with branches, gets a mouthful of leaves as he splutters around, and then he's dropping into a cave-like hollow in the hedge, the branches twisted together above them tightly enough that only a few shafts of light get through. Shh! The blonde dude grabs him and warns again, and the redhead at his side nods solemnly.
We're hiding from Utakata because he's it! You can't tell, okay?
Utakata? Sasuke doesn't know any students by that name, but then while he remembers seeing the blonde before, he doesn't know the other boy at all either. They definitely weren't in class that morning, though. Who? He asks as quietly as he can.
Utakata!
The blonde says cheerfully, like he should immediately know who that is.
He's the Jinchuriki of the Saiken!
Of the Rokubi, the redhead corrects, and Sasuke's heard people mention Jinchuriki before, though mostly in hushed tones and sharp whispers. It doesn't seem to be a good thing, but if that were true, the Jinchuriki probably wouldn't be playing a game with their children.
Do you want to play too?
The blonde asks excitedly, still hanging onto Sasuke's hand, and wide blue eyes stare at him entreatingly.
It's a lot of fun, and me and Gara are on a team together, so you can be with us!
Gara looks at the boy, then looks at Sasuke and nods decisively. I don't know who you are, Sasuke says a little helplessly because no one's ever just grabbed him and invited him to play before. He spends most of his time training so he can be as good as Itachi or at home helping his mother.
That gives him a smile, right and welcoming. I'm Uzumaki Naruto,
the boy declares.
Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi!
Sabaku no Gora, the other boy offers, if more quietly and slightly wary. Jinchuriki of the Ichibi. They're Jinchuriki too? But Sasuke thinks in faint bewilderment, that can't be bad. I'm Uchiha Sasuke, he says, glancing between them, and hesitates for a moment before asking carefully, It's okay?
Yeah!
Naruto nods enthusiastically.
You could throw kunai really good, and Gara's got his sand, and I have my chains, so we'll be the best team ever!
Uh-huh! Someone says loudly from right outside the bushes, and Sasuke doesn't even think. When Naruto and Gara bolt for the tunnel on the other side, he's right on their heels. An arm reaches into the hedge, grasping blindly, and then they're spilling out into the sunlight. A huge man, bigger than anyone Sasuke has ever seen before, straightens up laughing a little. There you are, he says, and takes a step towards them.
Hansen now!
Naruto shrieks, and golden chakra gathers around him, bursting into the air in the form of chains. Han dodges them with startling speed, but trips, and a whirl of sand sweeps out from under his feet to curl around Gara like a friendly snake.
Come on!
Naruto cries, grabbing Sasuke's hand again. Gara only hesitates for a moment before he takes the other, and together they haul him towards the street. Sasuke should probably care that lunch is about to end, that his father will be disappointed in him if he skips school. When Naruto is laughing, they're running flat out, and Sasuke can't seem to fight a smile as he lets them pull him along. Kurama lurks in the shadows outside Anbu's holding cells, eyes on the small glass orb on a beaded chain that he's fiddling with. He promised Fuji a starball, after all, and it's about time he delivers on his word. She's earned it 1,000 times over. The seals are simple enough to etch into the glass with the tip of one claw, so most of its attention is on his surroundings, ears straining to catch any sounds of people approaching. The lone remaining guard is unconscious, though, thanks to one of Kabuto's jutsus, and all the rest of the Anbu are scrambling to keep an eye on the game of tag that's happening. Kurama will have to get back to it shortly before his absence is noted, but everything's in chaos, and he's got more than enough time to spare. From within the cells, there's a heavy clank of a metal door opening and then staggering footsteps. Kabuto appears a moment later, one of Orochimaru's arms slung across his shoulders, and he supports the snake Sennin. Orochimaru looks pale, made all the more apparent by the fact that his wealth of hair has been chopped short just above his shoulders to even out Kasame's ragged cuts, but golden eyes still lock onto Kurama with the intensity of one predator facing another. Uzumaki, he says silkily. Now this is a surprise. Kurama snorts, straightening, and drops the star ball into his pocket. Orochimaru, he returns evenly. You accepted the terms. 3 favors. Orochimaru agrees, sounding faintly displeased, though his gaze doesn't waver. It's like he's trying to see right through Kurama to get at his motives, his secrets. Kurama wishes him the best of luck, but he's absolutely certain Orochimaru will never manage to get it right. Time-traveling Biju in human form sent back from an apocalyptic future isn't exactly a logical conclusion. I assume this is the same reason Tsunade is with you. She always was a sucker for a bad bet. Kurama bares his teeth at the scientist. It doesn't look much like a smile, and isn't meant to. Look at that, you really are a genius. He shifts his gaze to Kabuto and warns, Remember our deal. No more spies in Kanaha. If I find any, I'm sending them back to you in pieces. If either of you even consider harming someone I care about, I'll end you immediately.
Fury flashes across Orochimaru's face, but it fades into resignation and is quickly replaced by weariness. He sighs, pushing upright as best he can, and inclines his head. Agreed. May I presuppose that you'll know where to find me, should you need to call in a favor?
I'm pretty good at sniffing out snakes,
Kurama allows, showing teeth. Orochimaru doesn't look particularly reassured.
Thank you,
Kabuto says unexpectedly, and when Kurama glances at him in surprise, he inclines his head in a motion that's nearly a bow. He doesn't say anything more, but really just that is more than enough.
Get going already,
Kurama says instead of answering, uncomfortable with the gratitude. He tips his head towards the smaller branching tunnel that leads off to the left.
3 rights, middle fork, 2 lefts, then right again. Follow that passage to the end and you'll come out on the far side of the mountain. Most Ambo don't know it, so you should be safe for a while.
Without waiting, he turns around and heads back the way they came in, stepping over the unconscious guard. There's no sound behind him, but when he reaches the first doorway and glances back, Orochimaru and Kabuto are gone.